This is Kano. It's one of the most important Islamic places in Africa, still holding from its history all the way back. We all know that West Africa had been Islamized even before this time, when in the 1400s these types of mosques would be built that stand for a long time. So why am I singling out the 1400s? Well, remember, in the 1300s, Ibn Battuta came round these parts and saw Islamic kingdoms. Well, another Berber would come down and ensure the solidity of Islam amongst these African kingdoms. Some who had kind of wavered a little bit on Islam. For example, his name was Muhammad ibn Abd al-Karim al-Maghili, and he was a Berber. He traveled all the way through Africa. He's known for converting the Hausa and the Fulani into Islam, who, remember, back in the day, they had nothing to do with those kingdoms. Not fully, anyway. With the back and forth of Berbers moving into the West African areas and West Africans moving into the Berber areas, it seems quite obvious that the story that we're told of thousands of raids going down through the Sahara and this hostility between West African empires and Berber empires is not completely true. Especially, we see how these West Africans almost comfortably let these Berbers wander around in their kingdoms. And of course, how West Africans, and I've shown you a lot of them, just wander through the Islamic areas. One example would be Ahmed Baba al Timbuktu, who was a Berber, a black Berber, of the area where lots of writers would write about, and he traveled through these areas and wrote many books himself, 40 to be exact. Now, I did not choose Ahmed Baba al Timbuktu randomly. Ahmed Baba is actually one of the people that we know wrote about Muhammad ibn Abd al-Karim al-Maghili, the Berber that came down from these regions. And because he wrote about them, we can confirm that his travels are absolutely true in these parts. But he did not just go to Kano, even though this video will focus mainly on Kano. He traveled to other African kingdoms as well. Cities such as Gao, Katsina, Kano, Takeda, and the Songhai Empire. Now, it is written in Islamic texts that every 100 years, a reviver of the traditions of Islam, known as the Sunnah, would be returned by somebody. And these people were called Mujadido or Mujadid. These Mujadid would revive, not renew, not improve, not change, but because the traditions of Islam would sort of fade after 100 years, these people would be responsible for keeping the traditions as they were. So, when Muhammad ibn Abd al-Karim al-Maghali was invited into the kingdom of Kanu, he was thoroughly impressed by what he saw. He saw Muhammad Rumfa, who had instated a structure of government, qualities of ideal rules, and an administration of justice. And because of this, al-Maghali said that Muhammad Rumfa, the leader of Kanu, was a mujadid, a reviver of Islam, or a keeper of the culture, a conservator, if you will. Muhammad Rumfa would also write a book himself, as many people were literate back then, called Taj al-Din Fima Yajib ala il Maluk, which is translated to mean the crown of religion concerning the obligations of kings. Now, I want you to remember that Africa's traditions are slightly different than that of Europe or the Middle East. But this Berber, who's also African, who found this man who had basically preserved Islam in a true sense, was as so impressed that unlike a lot of these mujadid who were kings who basically crowned themselves that, he gave him this title, showing how proud he was of his Islamic knowledge and Islamic holdings to the traditions. But we must go back, all the way back to the 7th century, where we see iron smelters who were at this time non Muslim in the Niger kingdoms. What you will see is the Dala Hill. Now, these hills that you see are always fascinating to check in Africa because remember, Mapungubu Hill, or the hills in Zimbabwe, or the hill in the Kingdom of Congo, for some reason, these Africans are obsessed with building their main courts or their main mbazas or their main civilizations on these hills or around these hills, situating the elites on the hill or even the main workers on the hill. So the earliest civilization we see at Kano, which is situated by this hill, is the Nok culture, one of the most stunning, if not the most stunning, early civilizations found in Africa, who go back, we don't even know, and they sort of link us to how far back the African sophisticated art goes. Because, of course, you find in Bantu regions art that is less sophisticated. But with the picture I show you of Kano, Africa has this thing where the old and the new coexist. Also, we barely knew about the religions and cultures of these people living in the 7th century time until an accidental dig revealed ritual pottery. As we read from Timothy Kunle Oliela, Accidental Discovery of Giant Pots in Kanu. In 2016, 2 archaeologist sites were discovered in Kanu. These sites are the Roma Ward, Rangaza district of Ungogo local government area and Zangan Bara in Kanu municipal area of Kanu state. These sites were accidentally discovered during the course of digging in the foundation of building and an underground store, respectively. These sites where giant pots were discovered were reported, and the National Commission for Museum and Monuments took up the challenge by sending a team of archaeologists and a team of ethnographers to carry out immediate rescue excavation. But it was discovered that the giant pots had been vandalized before the arrival of the team at the site. This is as a result of the news going around that these pots possessed the ability to cure any type of ailments. It was also rumored that the pots contained gold. This attracted large crowds to the site, which led to the vandalization of the pots. Like most hills in Africa, all these have a historic ancestral name, and the animists that were there before the Muslims have oral tradition, and in their oral tradition, it goes like this. Barbushe was a hunter and pagan chief priest who was the most prominent leader of the indigenous animists of Dala. So, Who are these indigenous? So the indigenous minority pagans still residing in and around northern Nigeria purport in their oral tradition that Barbushe's lineage, going back by the chiefs of the ancestral Animists tribe recollection for to 40 to 50 generations before the arrival of Bagadua, a Muslim. Barbushe was the son of Buzame, who was the son of Garageje, who was one of the sons of four sons of Dala. Dala was of the first settler around Dala Hill, who came after the blacksmiths. Bayajida, according to the histories of West Africa, was, according to the legends, a person from Baghdad who migrated into West Africa, bringing with him some Islamic traditions. He arrived first at Bornu, meaning that he came from the direction of Baghdad through Egypt, arriving at Bornu, and then he ended up doing what he did in West Africa. I shan't talk about him today, but prepare for a video about him because this is a long oral tradition. Now, Muhammad Rumfa was not without his enemies. Of course, he fought against the Songhai Empire, but this ended when he accepted a wife in the daughter of Askai the Great. This daughter of the great and wife of another great would then take her kingdom to new heights when she guided her two sons, who would rule right after Muhammad Rumfa, into expanding into Songhai territories after a couple rebellions. One of her sons, Abdullahi, was influential in getting rid of an old enemy of Kanu, which even Muhammad Rumfa struggled with, the Katsina. The Katsina was a great and powerful kingdom and has one of the oldest mosques in Africa, along with Kanu, and also it was frequented by Berbers since the 10th century. But their time was drawing to a close as Abdullahi conquered them with the help of his mother. Abdullahi decided that he needed to conquer more kingdoms, and so he went on a campaign around West Africa, conquering many kingdoms. First, he started with the Katsuni, or Katsina. Then he went on to the Tsagero, and then to Zukzuk, and then the Zaria and Kadora, and then Kalam, then returning to Kanu. When he returned to Kanu, he found that the Bornu had a revolt inlaid within Kanu in the form of Dagachi. Dagachi was revolting and making troubles within the kingdom, while Abdullahi was not there. But Abdullahi had nothing to worry about because his mother, Awa, was a very influential and formidable person, and she alone prevented this rebellion. Not alone, but you know what I mean, without the help of him. So the Bornu sent a person to come and attack Kanu, seeing that Dagashi failed. This person from Bornu, when he reached there, was so impressed that he just humbled himself in front of the Kanu and decided to return back to Bornu. After he returned to Bornu and leaving Dagachi, the revolter, there, Abdullahi, incensed by the betrayal or revolt, decided to remove him from his office And instead, he put his own slave in that position. He ruled Kanu for 10 years. The next king would rule for 56 years, and his name was Muhammad Kisoki. This guy was inheriting a already formidable empire, and his reign was obviously one of the most prosperous, him lasting this long in power. The other thing is that he was the grandson of Muhammad Ramfa and the son of Abdallahi. Alliances had been made between the Bornu and the Songhai and the Kanu, and so they sort of relied on each other at this time. This would change in his time as he would get full independence over the Kanu, reaching a zenith of influence. He continued as a war leader to march against the Bornu. But here's the thing, he was also a Muslim, remember? And so war is not the game for Islam, it's education. And so even though he had marched against, and his ancestors had marched against many kingdoms, he sought books, education, schools, mosques all over Kanu. And this, in this triumphant time, was easy to do, relatively. He is the official first king of Kanu. His reign was from 999 AD till 1063 AD, followed by Warisis. In After that, Gajamesu, then Nawata, a twin brother, and then Gawata, his other twin, Yusa, Naguji, Gujua, Shekarurau the first, Tamia, Usmanu, and then we get to the sultans, Yaji the first, Bugaya, Kanejeji, Umaru, Dawuda, Abdullahi Burja, Dakauta, Atoma, Yakuba, Muhammad Ramfa, Abdallah, Muhammad Kisoki, Yakufu, Abdul Bakr Kado, Muhammad Shesheri, Muhammad Zaki, Muhammad Nazaki, Kutumbi, Al Haji, Sheikh Rao II, Muhammad Kukunai, Soyoki, Muhammad Kukunai, Bawa Dadi, Muhammad Sherifa, Kumbari, Al Haji Kabe, Yaji II, Baba Zaki, Duade Abasama II, Muhammad Al Wali II in 1781 till 1805.